They all know. Although, yeah. Right. Let's go.
My dog has just joined the party. Hold on. Hi, Hank. He's
Hank,
hanging in the
this is-
background.
Definitely a dog-friendly space.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll get Eric to come in a bit later. So, there we go.
Is your dog name's Eric?
Yeah, he's named after Eric Cantona. So.
Oh, cool.
Oh my God.
My brother is Eric, and I always ask Eric with a C or Eric with a K. My brother's Eric with a K.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I could have lied and said he was named after him, but he was a former Man United football player. And yeah, this is as people are arriving in the room. So I will bore you with the story another time, Julie.
That's quite all right. Welcome everyone as people are joining.
Absolutely.
So before we get started, I'll get the boring house admin stuff out of the way to begin with. So before we get started, I wanted to give another shout out to our sponsor, AdRoll. It's only with their help that the last 2 days of talks have been possible. So please go and check out the Growth Gorilla community they've set up to support marketers at adroll.com/community. Don't forget to use the hashtag HCF Summit and make sure you join the Facebook group too. We're getting all of the talks and recordings up there live first. So as soon as we've got them downloaded, we're getting them straight in there. So if you want to catch up on any of the talks that we've had over the last 2 days, then by all means, check them out in the group. If anybody needs a link to that, shout us out and we'll make sure that we get that across to you again. As with all the talks, make sure you use the Q&A functionality. So it's down in the middle of your screen. You should all be well versed on that now after months of Zoom. So down in the middle of your screen, click the Q&A button and put your questions in there because it means that we can prioritize them and make sure that we can get to all of them pretty quickly throughout the talk, end of the talk, whenever it is. So with all the admin stuff out of the way, this next talk is one I've been looking forward to the most since we announced the speaker lineup. So the first time I met Julie was in the old Drift office. I was over in town and spent the day working out of their office. Julie, having never met me before, came running up to me and gave me a big, massive hug and told me how pleased she was to have me in the partner network. The next day, having just found out that my wife was pregnant with our second child, she pulled together a mound of presents for me to take back to the kids, not just the new baby, but my daughter as well, because she didn't want her to feel left out. She's caught multiple transatlantic flights to help us grow as an agency. And she's someone I can tell you it's someone you can tell within minutes of meeting her. She really cares. And that should tell you all you need to know about Julie's approach to the customer. They're truly at the center for her. Without sounding like I'm fanboying her too much, Julie is an out and out customer experience rock star. I'm excited to hear her talk. And then she's also appearing on our CX panel later this evening where we can all pepper her with more questions. Julie is the VP of Customer Experience at Drift. She's ex-HubSpot, and I have yet to have a conversation with her where I haven't learned something. So I think you're all going to get something out of this talk, some massive takeaways, and I'm excited that she's joining us today. How's that, Julie? Was that gushing enough?
Rich, oh my gosh, I better deliver. You really, thank you.
Yeah, I have set the scene, so don't ruin it now.
I hope this goes well. Well, that was such a gracious introduction. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I am going to share my screen and we'll get started. And I can't believe that was as long ago as it was. Now knowing how old is your then baby?
He is 2.5. He'll be 3 in May.
Oh my goodness. Time goes by so quickly. It's amazing. I remember that. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who's joining us today. I'm here to talk about something I'm so excited to talk about. I could probably talk for way longer than I'm supposed to on customer-centric storytelling. And as Rich mentioned, I work at Drift. Prior to that, I was at Deloitte. So I actually grew up in corporate consulting, which is very different from the world I've been in for the past 10 plus years, and was at HubSpot for about 8 years and spent a lot of my time actually in EMEA and in APAC. So I lived in Singapore, I lived in Dublin for a while, building the international customer success team. And at Drift, where I've spent the past 3 years, our number one leadership principle is to put the customer at the center of everything we do. But here's the thing. If we are not backing up that phrase with action, it's just lip service and it means nothing. And at the end of last year, if you can even imagine this time last year, it feels like 10 years ago at this point, we had just started to notice something. So we have these 3 teams. And so for those of you who are maybe part of a SaaS organization, this looks very familiar. We have a sales team, a marketing team, and customer success. I've been in customer success for the majority of my career, and we've always been sort of trying to find our home. I'd say like the past 10 years, for those of you in CS, maybe you lived in part of the sales organization. Maybe you were an extension of support. Customer success has been really finding its way. And luckily for many of us, we now have very unique, distinct goals. Sales is responsible for revenue. Marketing is responsible for leads and pipeline. Success is often responsible for some variation of health and maybe expansion revenue. So this is all well and good because we've established our worlds, but we were operating in 3 unique worlds. So while we were delivering on these metrics, the experience for the customer was one where they had a very different interaction for somebody in sales, somebody in marketing, and somebody in CS. And what we realized at Drift was we actually needed unity. In order to truly put the customer in the center of everything we did, we needed to figure out how to better unify the experience that our customers and future customers were having with our brands. And our take is that CX, customer experience, is that unifier. So if you're listening to this, you're probably like, but why? Why CX? What even does CX do? And this is something I always come back to, which is if your customer experience suffers, your revenue suffers. And customer experience isn't just post-sale. Customer experience is what people experience the second they encounter your brand. So 74% of people will switch off from doing what they're doing with you if they find the buying process too difficult. And 50% of customers will stop working with you after only one bad experience. So think about the revenue impact of experience, this thing that maybe you're not necessarily pouring effort into or thinking about. And so we truly believe that customer experience is the secret sauce to driving demand, new business, and retention. So your next question is probably like, okay, great, but how do you do that? And for us, CX is what then truly puts the customer at the center of every single thing we do. And customer storytelling, which is what I'm going to focus on today, has been a central, critical strategy in helping us really live up to that leadership principle. And these are the 3 reasons why. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is story before solution. Now, people want to hear about your customer stories. They don't want to hear about your solutions. They don't want to hear about your features and functions. But there's an experience that almost all buyers hate. So as a participant in the audience today, sort of shut your eyes for a minute and think about the last time you bought something and how much you cannot stand the feature dump. Or if you're reading a story and all you want to know is understanding how your world could sort of translate into this thing that you're maybe interested in buying, you're not getting that because unfortunately the narrative and the arc of customer stories typically doesn't follow that human path. So how many times have you read some sort of customer story and it kind of follows something like this? Customer X, Y, or Z uses X, Y, or Z feature or function. And you're like, that's great. But like, what is that? I don't even know what that widget or thing or tool is. The other is how this customer used this feature. And you might read that and say, okay, great. But like, I don't know why I should care. I don't even know what that feature is. I really don't understand why I should care. And then the last one that's usually the kicker, by using this feature, this customer solved their problems. And you're sitting there reading this saying, okay, but how? And also like, what were their problems? So you experience that when as a person buying something, what you really want to read is this customer had this specific pain. And that pain is articulated with such detail, such precision. You read it and you go, oof, that's me. Like, that's me. I see myself in this customer and I feel that pain too. The other part of it is here's how they then went about solving that pain. And that is communicated with such clarity. You say, wow, that is exactly like that thing is what I want. And that's exactly what I need to do. You start to see yourself in the solution. And then the third is when you're able to see here's where this customer is today and here's what they're doing next. And this is packaged with such great details. You basically have fear of missing out. You read it and say, not only do I see myself, not only do I actually physically feel and experience that pain myself, I need to know how to get there too. So here's how to make this happen. The first is starting with the challenge. So if you're somebody who is a storyteller for your business, maybe you sit in marketing, maybe you sit in sales, everybody's responsible for being able to articulate the stories of your customers. There's a framework I really want you to follow because it's worked so well for us. So the first is starting with the challenge. And the key here is you have to make it hurt. And I know that maybe sounds weird and it maybe sounds the opposite of customer centricity, but is the only way to talk about the real things that the people who are interested in what you offer are looking for. So this comes from our customer Informatica, who we love dearly. We have a great relationship with them. Listen to how painful this challenge is. Missed opportunities, a flawed buying experience, lack of sales and marketing alignment. And down the bottom here, as we go line by line into the pain, missed opportunities due to slow response times. So if you're a leader in digital marketing, if you're a leader in sales, my goal is that you read that and say, oh my gosh, that's something that I feel. I'm hoping you don't feel that. But if you are looking for a solution, I want the challenge that our customers have experienced to be things that help you feel better about your own challenges and create an opportunity for you to gain awareness about what other people are dealing with. So make that pain hurt and articulate it very, very clearly in language that your future customers are talking in internally at their businesses already. Then you showcase the solution, and through that showcase, you surface their strategy. So here's Informatica's solution: a conversational model that engages sales, marketing, and buyers. And then below, our customer there is Gary, also Bill. We talk about exactly what their use cases were. So very specifically, they figured out a better way for contacting us, fast tracking their demos, and leveraging their high value assets. Notice I don't say anything in here about drift. Their solution has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with our brand or our company. It has everything to do with the strategy that this customer was able to deliver. Using our tools and our platform is something that helped them, but the story is about them. So really being critical, and this is so important, language matters, the way in which you package this, the way in which you interview people to pull this information out matters. You want to understand their frame of mind and the way in which they think about their strategy, and you showcase that. And then the cherry on top of all of this is you share the results and the metrics matter. And I will repeat, this also has nothing to do with you. This is all about them. And so to make the customers the heroes of your brand, show how they were able to overcome that really painful beginning stage that you saw in the challenge. So an accelerated sales cycle, they've transformed their buyer engagement and they deepened that sales and marketing collaboration. And also, let's take a look at the actual real numbers. 67% shortened sales cycle, down to a minute in response time, 2x the number of opportunities. So being able to showcase not just, hey, by using X, Y, or Z feature and function, here's where they are, show them where they got to by virtue of their amazing strategy and the innovation they drove, and make your customer the hero. So the takeaway here as we go through part one, story ahead of solution, tell your customer story, not your own, and understand what that really means. Hopefully this gives you a nice example through the challenge solution results framework that I just walked you through. Okay, we're going to jump into the second piece, which is customer networking before customer advisory. And if there are any people from product marketing, they're probably ready to throw things at me because this is so sort of opposite to the typical advice you're going to get. But I have a story to tell you. Well, we're speaking of stories, let me share a quick story, which is the story of the Drift customer advisory board that never was. So like many people, this is maybe what some of your 2020 plans looked like. So entering January, actually this time last year, I was working on my strategic plan for 2020, and it included our first ever customer advisory board. It was going to be a customer retreat and very, very specific advisory experience for a select group of customers who are going to provide us a ton of insight to our products, our gaps, our roadmap in Sonoma's Russian River Valley at this awesome place called Auto Camp. So we were going glamping, we were going outside. Then came March, then came the cancellation of everything. So my story is not unique. This happened to everyone. But this was our plan. We entered 2020 with this vision of creating an advisory board, mostly in service to us, to getting the feedback to bring back to our teams to improve our products. So we sort of continue through the year. Plan B started to evolve. And I feel like like the correlation of Plan B, or like the partnership between the Zoom logo and Plan B, is just like what it is, right? So many Plan Bs turned into let's do it over Zoom. And we started going back to our customers, not only the ones we had intended to invite to the advisory board, but other customers who we were really close to. And we just continued to get this overwhelming feedback of like, I just miss networking, especially now. I miss learning from peers. This is devastating to my business, to my team. What should I do? What are your customers doing? What are other people doing? I don't have opportunities to have the conversations I would have been having at these events. And also, like, we're kind of sick of these giant virtual events. I wish there was an intimate way to talk to other people, to learn from them. And so as we entered the second half of the year, this is when I say this is where the pivot came, which was we had to transform advisory into what we started to call Ascend, which was an exclusive customer network. And what we did was, from taking that advice, knowing what our customers truly were looking for, forcing them into the advisory that our board wanted, that our executive leadership team wanted, that everybody wanted, it wasn't the right thing for our business or for our customers at this time. And so we transitioned the strategy into what became an invite-only exclusive community for customers in very specific levels, because this is where we're hearing the most pain from. And we defined our mission, which was to create exclusive networking, accelerated growth and learning event for elite leaders in demand and digital marketing. So we became really specific to the community who's giving us this feedback. And this is what we did. We made this thing 90 minutes. We maxed it out at 25 because the biggest piece of feedback we kept hearing was the intimacy. They wanted the opportunity to see other faces and actually have a dialogue and a conversation. The first 60 minutes were a customer facilitated conversation on a crowdsourced topic. So we basically just took the feedback we heard and we're like, are these the things you want to talk about? If yes, great. Let's bring on some customers who have some experience here and let's have them lead the discussion. So we would do that for 60 minutes. And then the last half, we created what I call an accelerated virtual event. So many people, if you're like me, I'm home, I have a dog in the corner and 3 kids downstairs who, so far so good, have not interrupted this and run into the room. But people are busy. They're trying to balance everything at once. And so what can we do to provide and curate an experience where people can talk shop and then get a little bit of that effect and a little bit of that experience of what the after hours look like in a way that allows people to engage. So we did this through virtual accelerated wine tasting. So the takeaway here, and I'm going to go into the steps for you, is that we wanted an advisory board, but our customers wanted each other. And listening to our customers engage them even more. And so when we connect this back to customer stories and customer-centric stories, this created an opportunity for us to build relationships and to hear the stories of so many more customers than we would have had we only had that single advisory event. So here's how to make something like this happen for you if you're interested. So the first thing is, like for us, I happen to live in marketing and success and work with marketers, which is pretty cool. But we had to talk about something that our customers deeply cared about. And so here's an example of an upcoming event. We now do these twice a month. So we've been doing these twice a month since January, and we change up the event. So our upcoming event, based on crowdsourced feedback, is keeping demand momentum and doubling down on digital. So talk about something that your customers deeply care about and are interested in, and hint, it cannot be about you. I'm going to repeat that throughout this whole conversation. Notice there's nothing here that says with the Drift platform, with Drift features and functionality. This is all about thought leadership and people sharing their own experiences and their own stories. The next part is make your customers the star. Reminder, you are not the star. This is not about you. I always like to say, if I've done a customer event well, I'm basically just Peter Pan's shadow in the background. You don't even know that I'm there. I'm doing the boring stuff that allows and facilitates the great discussion and magic to happen across your customers. So what we do is, whether it's me or our VP of demand or our CMO, we will facilitate. So we'll bring everybody together, we'll kick off the topics, and then we are on mute for most of the time. And we bring our customers to come and talk. And what I'll share here is this rarely is us begging and asking people to do us a favor. And I'm going to talk more about this in a moment. This is opportunity for your customers to share their thought leadership, showcase their abilities to innovate and the things that they've strategically done in their business, and to drive a conversation with peers and leaders in their industry. So I'm really excited for this upcoming one. This is exclusive to Drift customers. We have two of our most amazing customers joining us, one from Wake Forest, so coming from the education space, another coming from technology. So a really interesting, diverse conversation that they will be leading on keeping demand momentum and doubling down on digital. And then the last bit here, so I mentioned we create this accelerated wine experience that happens at the end. See if there's an opportunity for you to create something that's memorable and repeatable, that offers an opportunity for people to connect that isn't directly related to the business. So the way that we've been doing this, we will share the background. This is the what could have been view that you would have had if we did go to the Russian River Valley and have that event. So we basically created that as a backdrop. We partner with this winery. They send up bottles of wine. And it's really nice. Like, people come off camera. You learn a ton about people's interest in wine to begin with, and sort of their background and experiences and things that they're interested in. And it creates this really quick, accelerated way to get people to connect differently. So the takeaway here is to create opportunities for your customers to have a shared experience, and they, by virtue of you creating that path, will share their own stories. Okay, I have one last thing I'm going to do here, which is talking about the person and partnership that you want to establish ahead of thinking about that person as just your customer and just a customer at a very specific company or a logo. So the key here is you want to get to know your customers as people to build partnerships with. They are not just customers at companies. This is your foundation. If you take nothing else away from today, this is your foundation for understanding their stories as people, not just customers. And so this is what I mean, and this is how to make this happen. I'm going to pause really quickly as well. Being all things 2020, my window is open and my neighbor is literally cutting down a tree. I can't make this up. Can you all still hear me? You can't hear that in the background?
We can't hear that noise at all.
Okay, excellent, great. I'm just going to keep, okay, it got a little louder. If you can still hear me, that's great. We're just going to keep going.
We're good.
Okay. So the first is find out what your customers value in a partnership. And Rich, you shared that amazing story at the beginning. And what's so great about that is I knew something personal about you, and I attached some of that swag and some of the gifts we gave to you as something personal. But often the thing that you share with customers to build a relationship is not swag. I like to say the best relationships are not usually built over sweatshirts sent in the mail. And so something we did at Drift that has been just so profoundly important to us was getting a sense of what people actually wanted from us in return for a strong partnership and strong relationship. And we specifically asked, we said, we value our relationship. What are some of the things you'd like to see us doing more for you? And so here are some of the things that came out. No surprise, networking with industry peers. That's something we just talked about earlier. Advocate opportunities, so speaking opportunities, the ability to be panelists, speaking engagements, doing things like this, personal and professional platforms to share their thought leadership, to offer their thought leadership, access to exclusive offers, access to company leadership. And so it's key to really understand, like, what are the things that your customers value in a partnership, and how can you ensure that you're delivering those? So from there, let's say you learn some of that, create those opportunities for your customers that align with their personal goals. And something that's been so helpful for us, knowing that we had so many customers who were looking for speaking opportunities, who wanted opportunities to showcase their innovation and thought leadership, we now bring so many customers along with us to webinars, to speaking engagements. This is Adrian, one of my favorite customers from a company called Smartling. And we gave a talk on his strategy for modernizing customer experience at his business. So yes, we talk about Drift, but I would say that 95% of this discussion was a Q&A on his strategy. Where were you? What were the things you were seeing in the industry and in your business? How did you pivot? What were the reasons why? We were a tool in his tool belt that allowed him to achieve that. But we wanted to create that opportunity for him to really showcase and share his thought leadership and his expertise. And then the last one, and I went back and forth on this headline because I was like, how can you speak at a conference about humanizing the experience and say be human. Isn't that cheating? But the reality is, like, there's no realer way to say this than this. Be human. Coming from corporate consulting, I've had to erase the corporate speak bad habits that I had. And these are some of the reasons why and some of the things that really do matter. If you think about the relationships you have generally, so few of them are actually scheduled. And if you think about your life in the customer and the sales world, everything is, let's schedule a call, let's schedule a Zoom, let's schedule this. And so for me, sort of like the barrier or that thing to think through is, how many relationships have I earned the right to text, to Slack, to have real conversations where I can text you, Rich, and say, hey, I have a question, as opposed to, Rich, may I schedule a Zoom call with you to talk about this thing? And I would say that's vice versa. How many customers are coming to me via text, via these channels that perhaps are usually sort of secured for more of your personal or intimate relationships? That's where you start to truly build a different type of communication. The second is earning the right to conversations beyond their business. And it's so interesting because small talk gets a really bad rap. And I would say that if you do it incorrectly or inappropriately, you're only doing it to fill space, or you're only doing it to hit a checklist of things in your sort of schedule of what you need to hit on a call. You're doing it the wrong way. Getting to know people becomes a door opener for you to truly understand more about what they care about, what they value. I'll share a really quick story about this, which was, like any business, any company, we made a mistake. And if you've never made a mistake in a business, I will, I'll sort of hound you to think, like, I'm sure there have been mistakes that have been made that you've had to apologize for. No apology in anything is usually solved by sending somebody a sweatshirt, right? If we think back to our reliance sometimes on swag, and we had a relationship with a customer where we really did not do the right thing, and we needed to respond appropriately. And we had known through him about his involvement with a nonprofit that was really personal, really important to him. And that's where we extended our energy and putting something together that we really wanted to be meaningful to him, to show, like, as an extension of how sincerely we appreciate you. We wanted to be able to do this on behalf of our business for yours. And so thinking about things like that, and I'm not sharing that to give ourselves a pat on the back, it's taking those cues and understanding the personal things that matter to somebody outside of their job, and how that can become so much more than just a conversation starter. And then the third thing I'll share, and this sort of adds to the one I just mentioned, which is adding value beyond just their business goals. Your customers, and for us, in B2B, SaaS, in sales and marketing, often your customers are only in their role for 18 to 24 months. And so what you need to be able to do is establish that relationship, establish that rapport, and ensure that they're going to stay with you as a customer for life. Customer for life doesn't mean that they stay at that company until retirement. It means that they carry you with them to the next place they go, to the next role they go to. And hopefully, if you've been able to influence and support their innovation and their career path, what you offer as a company has allowed them to get to that next step and that next level. And so going beyond just thinking about somebody as a customer, what is their job? What is their role? What are their personal goals? What do they want to do? Earn the right to have those conversations with customers. And the key takeaway here is get to know who your customer is as a person, never stop adding value to them. So let's revisit where we started, which was this leadership principle, putting the customer at the center of everything you do. Customer-centric stories, so what we've just covered, are critical to our strategy in actually putting the customer in the center of these sometimes disjointed parts of a business as you grow. And if you invest in this, you will fuel revenue for your business. And the reason I share that is 65% of people find a positive experience with a brand more influential than great advertising. So if you think about what we just covered today, the customer-centric stories that you're able to publish that are shared by your success teams, shared by your marketing teams, shared by your sales teams on sales calls, think about that advertising, basically that free advertising you're getting through your excited, engaged customers, because you've earned the right to that relationship. Think about the customer conversations and experiences that you're curating and facilitating that allow for more engagement. With these events that have transitioned or pivoted from advisory board to these personal Ascend experiences, they happen twice a month. We've just recently started opening them up to people who are interested in Drift to learn, because the conversations are so productive. We want other future customers to hear the stories and hear the feedback, not about Drift, but about the strategy and the way in which these marketing leaders think. So think of that as the opportunity, how powerful that those stories can be. And then lastly, the champions that you are nurturing. If you truly understand their personal stories, those champions and advocates that can potentially stay with your brand for life just by virtue of knowing what's important to them and understanding their stories. So your customer-centric stories can create that positive brand experience that's so important. So never underestimate the power of storytelling. And for more examples, feel free, check out the stories of Drift's most successful customers. We plug them all here. We have them all up here. Steal the format, take it. It works really well for us. We hope it works well for you. And I hope you learned something today about keeping the customer at the center of everything you do. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. That was, I think, like, I don't know if you can see the comments, but you've got a bunch of like brilliance, fantastics, clapping emojis, all sorts of things coming on. So I think the insight that you've given everybody is great. There's a few questions starting to come through. So,
sure.
And because I'm hosting it, I'm going to cheat and go first. So
go for it.
Like you're like the program, like Ascend. So like, great. I understand the pivot and why you're there. And like, I can see from a strategic level, why that's a great thing to have in place. How does what you've done with Ascend then filter down into your day-to-day CS work? So like the frontline troops on CS, if you will.
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things we did when we launched this was we wanted to get very specific about the customer type. So like, who is the person we're inviting to this? And based on the feedback, based on what we learned, it was a very specific role. It's the head of or director to VP of digital or demand. And so this is super tactical, but I'll share it and happy to go even deeper into the weeds if anybody wants to talk after this. One of the things we've done is, in partnership with our operations team, we've created something in our CRM that we call job seniority formula and then customer type. So one of the things that I've been very focused on is thinking about customer experience, but not just experience itself, customer experience marketing. And key to us in seeing success with customers is that not that they're only using your features and functions, and so that's usually measured by health, but that you're engaging with the right person. And at Drift, we need to be engaged with the person who's day-to-day in the tool using it, but the person who also owns and runs the digital and demand strategy. And filling that gap in creating an opportunity for engagement, for a relationship, has been key to this program. And so the way this carries over into our CS and also into our account management organization is that we're able to share, hey, we had this person join us, great opportunity for a follow-up conversation. What did they learn? What things are top of mind? Who can we introduce you to if you weren't able to catch their name as a follow-up for a conversation? So I'd say two things. Like, one is it's become a really good door opener to building better relationships higher and deeper at our customers, which is critical to health and retention. Health is not just how many daily active users, who are those daily active users? And interestingly, often the director to VP level aren't in your product in some cases, but they are the strategic drivers of what happens with that in collaboration with the rest of your suite of tools that they have. So that it's been a door opener for that relationship. And then I'd say second is people come out of these conversations with ideas. And sometimes people do say, hey, I use Drift with X, Y, and Z integration. And someone will say, oh my gosh, I haven't done that. That sounds great. Great, you should talk to your CSM about that. And so it's interesting. We pour a lot of energy, as most companies do, into community and knowledge base and resources. There's no better megaphone for what your product can do and what your features and functions can do than a customer sharing a story of how it's worked for them. And people hear that and it resonates with them in a little bit of a more authentic way, because it's not me telling you to do it. It's a customer who is at the same level as you, at a very similar business to you, telling you that this works, and you start to get that fear of missing out. You're like, oh, I should be doing that as well.
It feels like, particularly over the last kind of like 18 months, possibly like 2 years, there's been a real seismic shift with particularly SaaS companies with a focus on customer experience. Like, and you hear multiple like businesses where they've now set up voice of the customer teams and things like that. And it feels like previously where CS was an add-on, like we've sold them and we should probably make sure everything is going all right at the back end, because otherwise we're going to churn. Now it feels like CS has moved, or CX has moved away from that stop churn to like, how do we actually accelerate growth? And it feels like it's moving further and further up. I know we're not supposed to talk about the funnel anymore, but like it feels like it's further and further up the funnel in the engagement scope. And I think like it's really interesting to see that change.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting too, it's the investment, right? Like so much, I don't have the exact stats in my mind, but the more you read about this, like so much revenue comes from your existing customer base. And what's fascinating is often companies sort of have that backwards. And, you know, when you talk about the funnel, whether you're supposed to talk about it or not, like in the world of marketers, you still think about that. You put so much emphasis on demands, like getting these people in through the discovery phases into consideration and into purchase, and it doesn't end there. And so what I've really liked is, I'm going to do it with my hands, like the bow tie funnel, where it doesn't stop. In fact, when you think about the distinct paths that a customer is on post-sale, you have a very specific period of time where you need to engage, activate, and excite that customer. You then need to ensure that those engaged, activated, and excited customers are expanding. And those customers who have been able to accomplish all that are then evangelizing and advocating on your behalf. And what's great is those customers who end out on the other side go all the way back to the top of the funnel as your customer stories. And what's fascinating too, coming from CS, you know, I am not a marketer by trade, but I've been in service to and supporting marketers the entire time I've been in SaaS as somebody who's led customer success and account management. And what's fascinating is, as somebody who is an account manager or CSM doing the job, it gets very fragmented quickly. A lot of times, all of the post-sale things just get dumped to a CS, and it's not creating a great experience for your customer. So imagine if you have a team focused exclusively on getting that customer set up to see success. Table stakes, this is what you need in order to see value from our product, and that team can focus on that. And as surround sound support to that effort, you have a whole marketing channel and campaign and program driving what needs to happen behind the scenes to help move people through that path. And that person can focus on their job and not all of these other things. Same with moving people into expansion. Imagine from an operational standpoint, I as a CS or an account manager, however your business is set up, can focus exclusively on the execution of the things that need to happen to further optimize this customer and getting value from what we offer. And then on the backside, again, sort of Peter Pan shadow in the background, we are moving customers through very specific paths, introducing them to the opportunities that likely suit them next based on what we know about them. And we're curating and creating that path in those programs so the CS and the AMs can do their job.
Amazing. Like, I just feel like I need to jump in here. Julie, your energy is incredible. Like, I can tell that you love this, and like, this is some of the comments that have been coming in the chat as well. So like, it's absolutely amazing to see.
Thank you.
There was something that you said about sort of the bow tie funnel, and you know, I actually really like speaking about funnels. Like, I think it gives us a way of at least thinking about these things. And
it's a safe space, Joe. You can say funnel.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's so important. But specifically within that, you sort of mentioned you know, people driving into new customers and you know, becoming revenue and you know, achieving business goals too. So there's a question here from Tricia who asks, how do you monitor your CX activity? Is it done in a report, or is it more that kind of knowing that somebody can text you type of thing?
Yeah, so this is also pretty tactical, but one of the things that we've been incredibly focused on, and this is not yet launched, but it's key to our 2021 strategy, is thinking about the 2x2, the customer 2x2. And what I mean by that is, if you look at your entire base of customers, you have, if you're to draw, I'm literally just going to draw while we're here, because why not?
Are we going to do something in the top right?
So if you have in the top here, your high highs. So I think of this as your customers who are using your product to the highest level and they're spending the most. Then you have, if you go sort of further down, all right, this might be a little crazy to do, but so you have your high highs. Then if you go down, if you sort of go clockwise, you have people who have high spend but low engagement. Then if you sort of go around, you have your low lows, like low spend, low engagement. Those are there for two reasons. One is they're brand new and you just need to excite them and activate them, or they may not be the best fit for what you offer, or you have in some way not enabled them and activated them appropriately. So you need to make considerations for like what needs to happen there. And if you go further up, you have people who have high engagement, high potential, and low spend. And so for us, if I think about, a mantra we have at Drift is simplify, focus, repeat. My goal is to get more customers into the high. And we need to be able to track the programs, the campaigns that we're running in service to that goal. And so if I'm back talking to you a year from now, I want to be able to share, if we're going deep into CX and measurement, our ability to move customers through the journey and getting to a place where they are activated, engaged, and really excited to advocate on our behalf in order to share their stories, in order to have more advocates. And so that is like if I think about the strategic top line goal, that is everything we do. And if we are running something and doing something that is not in service to us moving customers into a place where they are able to be retained and grown, expanded, and advocated, is it worth doing? And so there are some things that are not measurable, right? So like, am I going to tie, like if I text Rich tonight and like am I going to be like, Rich texted me, therefore, like there are some things you just have to accept. And I think of it as like, there are certain things that are just the right thing to do, right? Like that is enabling people to be customer centric. That to me is just behavior. Like that's what you should be doing. Anything that is programmatic. So Ascend, for example, I have deep data on who attends, who registers, what engagement looks like 30 days post-event, 60 days post-event, 90 days post-event, and then we follow the revenue all the way through. So I think there are certain things you have to sort of put a line in the sand and say, what is a strategic program? What's a strategic campaign? And then what are just table stakes for good customer experience that you expect the team to be delivering on?
I absolutely adore that. Thank you.
Sorry, just like that segues into like one of the other questions I had quite nicely is, so like a program like Ascend, where on the surface you would say, okay, there's not necessarily like a direct ROI that we can pin out of this. It's not like running other market activity, but I didn't realize that you're then like tracking that stuff in behind. But when you're going into the boardroom, so you sat down with DC and you're like, I want to run this program. How are you balancing off the knowledge and insight you're gaining with the potential ROI, or do you value one over the other, or is it kind of like we need both?
Yeah, it's both. I was going to say this is probably a terrible answer, but it's both. And when I think about our strategy as a business, and many companies are here as well, especially now, these were conversations we were having prior to 2020, but our ability to retain and sort of maintain relationships with customers often does come down to making sure you are engaging the right people. And so, something I would sort of challenge people to think through is like, who are your daily active users? When you look at your features and functionality and the adoption of your product, who is in there? Do you know who's in there? Who's attending your strategic business reviews? Do you have relationships with the right people? And for us, like strategically, we have a goal and a vision of being able to build better relationships, engage more deeply with people at this very specific level. So this becomes a gateway into being able to do that. And then tracking the revenue, tracking the movement of that customer, and knowing if we've had an interaction. Another thing that we focus on is contact engagement. So, I don't expect, I think about our CRO and our CMO, I don't expect them to be like logging in every single day to their tools, but their sort of first and seconds in command are, and those are the people that they rely on. And do you understand that relationship at your customers? Do you understand what that looks like? I often say, okay, if we bought Drift, who would we be wanting to talk to? And like, you have to kind of put yourself into that environment. And depending on what industry you're on, it's a good exercise to go through. Like if you were to sell what you sell to your own company, who's the ideal customer that would be purchasing, implementing, and then continuing on as like that economic buyer and executive sponsor? And do you have the right to that relationship yet? And so it's learning, and this has been a big learning curve for us as well. And I think a lot of companies are going through it, which is like, your relationship doesn't just stop because somebody has been onboarded and they've implemented your tool and you have X number of daily active users. There are strategic relationships and strategic engagements that you really need to be thinking about developing. And what we found is that this program is a great door opener for those to be established.
Great.
So there's a question here from Kate in the chat, and she asks, what does collaborating with sales, marketing, and CS look like internally? Do you have like set reoccurring meetings, and do you kind of have to champion a lot of this in those?
Yeah. So what's been really fun about this is our team was dying for something like this, right? And I think that's where I've been very fortunate, because I come from the other side. Like, I come from CS. I lived in account management that was in sales at my previous company. And so I've been on the other side of this, where I'm like, man, like, all this effort usually goes before the sale. And it's on me as a CS or an account manager or a CS leader or account management leader to like kind of make all this other magic happen. And so packaging it and ensuring that you're able to deliver what's in it for you. I think where things fall flat is if I am simply talking to sales and saying, hey, we've posted another customer story and that story has generated X number of views. They don't care. I wouldn't care. What they care about is, hey, we know that you have a very specific use case that the team has been trying to sell to. Here's an amazing example. And what we've done is we've packaged for you X, Y, or Z data points. Here are some specific curated quotes. We've tied it up with a bow very nicely for you. Take it and run with it. One of my personal goals this quarter, in fact, has nothing to do with traditional marketing metrics for the customer stories. So we just posted a new one today. I am not measured on views. I'm not measured on conversions from pages. So like, how many people do I actually sort of gain through the web from that post? I have put goals in place for myself related to sales enablement. Which translates into, does the sales team actually use this and find it useful? And we use a sales enablement tool that allows me to help track that. But my take is the only way to build a good relationship and to align is that you have shared goals. So there would be dissonance, and this probably wouldn't work as well as it does if I was like, this is great, everybody loves the story because it's shared on social and it had all these page views and impressions, and the sales team's like, yeah, but like, these aren't the conversations I'm having with people. And even though you're really proud of the format, like, it's not working. So there's ongoing, I would say it's not a formal meeting. There's ongoing dialogue. And I have found sort of like my go-to sales reps and CSMs and AMs who I'm like, hey, give me the real deal. Like, does this help you? What else do you need? In fact, there's a conversation I have later today with our head of sales enablement, our head of product management, and one of our sales VPs to talk through a very specific use case that we need a better story around. And that is a group effort, because again, I think we have to get out of this mentality of like, I live in this box and I own this thing. People in your front lines should sort of feel that autonomy. I think of it sometimes as like playing your field position. If everybody's running after the ball, that's strange. But you need coaches, and like, you need those members of the team to come together and like really partner on what that field strategy is. And so I think of it as like, give your team the direction to operate and do their job well. And it's your role as the coach or the leader to partner across all the different functions of the business to ensure that what you're delivering is going to help them.
Thank you. And I mean, it's been a bit of a running theme. We've been so lucky over these 2 days to speak with so many amazing people. But a lot of them just do come back down to that sort of, that kind of same principle. Sometimes you just got a gut feeling that you need to do something, or you need to speak to the right person, or you want to be producing this thing because you think there's a need that needs to be solved. I think a lot of us can overcomplicate things sometimes, but when you've got these personal relationships or the experience to fall back on, which you've donated us today, then it becomes so much easier.
Right. And it has to be, and I know this is part of what you've hit on all week. Like it has to be natural. You can't force this, and you earn it comes down to trust and earning that trust. It's talking to people, and it sounds so basic and so simple, but like talking to people like real people, engaging with them, getting to know them, you earn the right to do that. And it's an investment in time, and it's an investment. I think about some of these stories we've written, and you get to know people pretty deeply because you're asking questions in a way that most vendors typically don't ask. Usually there's an interview package and you go through and you fill in the blanks and that's it. When you deeply sort of get into like, hey, I'm curious, like how has this affected when you think drift aside, put drift in a box, like when you think about your experience being at this company for the past X number of years and the opportunity you had to build the strategy from scratch and sort of get out of this pain you were in, what's that done for you? That's a very different conversation and you learn so much more.
I love that. And there's actually prompted a thought there. And I appreciate that these whole 3-4 minutes have been like, everyone is unique and every conversation is different and stuff like that. But when you go out to interview people, do you have like a toolbox of killer questions that you ask each time to sort of, find out more?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I call it the customer story engine. So it's basically, and I have to give our co-founders credit for this. They had all of us like really operationalize our functions and think about for the things you are going to run, what can you do so they can be done on repeat? Yes, you have to experiment a little bit and you're going to learn, but what is that written overview of the exact steps to take so that it's super simple for you to scale? So we have the customer story engine, and in that engine is the interview guide, and we've evolved it over time. But very specific questions we ask every customer related to their challenges, related to the solution, and then related to results. And what's interesting, something I'll share, like we're in the process right now of putting together some videos because the feedback we're getting too is like the written stuff is great, but like we need this hunger for seeing people. Like we want to actually hear customers talk. So we're going through a video strategy, and we ask the exact same questions to people from across the business. And what was fascinating was you just naturally start to hear or get the impression of what matters most to that person based on how they answer. So a customer of ours we talked to, I talked with one of their top performing sales development reps, asked them the exact same questions that I asked their CMO. And it was incredible, like without even saying like, let's tell your story, they told their story by virtue of how they answered those questions, because what a sales development rep is focused on has a lot to do with where they are in their career, where they are in their life, the things that are important to them, separate from a CMO who has street responsibilities to investors and the public and their board, and thinking not just like one step ahead, but like what is the next 5-year plan? What does this look like? And that to me has been really interesting. So I rambled a little bit there, but having a rubric and a framework is really important, because if you're asking the same things of different people, it brings together something that ends up becoming a really fascinating learning for you.
Absolutely. I love that. Rich?
So we've got a couple of questions here. Like that's
Yeah, sure.
2 minutes left. We'll get through the ones that we can, and if not, we'll bump them up to the panel this evening. But
awesome.
First one, customer centricity is so important. I 100% agree. But what happens when the customer on a specific occasion is wrong? Mm-hmm. How do you approach that with them without devaluing them as a customer?
Yes, I love this question so much, because I think it's one of the hardest things to do, which is, and I see this happen all the time, which is a customer, I'll talk through this in a real example, which is a customer comes to you and says they're not seeing value from your solution, right? That is like a common thing. Like, I'm just not seeing the value. And you pull back the engine or pull back the hood, whatever, and you look under the engine, you're like, yeah, of course you're not seeing value, because like you're not using it the right way. And I've told you, and we've shared with you best practice, but your team isn't doing the thing, right? Like that to me is a common thing that can happen. And this done wrong is you don't address it, right? You just keep trying to make the customer happy, and you don't want to call them out because you worry about devaluing the relationship, and you have all these fears and worries about what could happen. all that customer wants, like literally what customers want more than anything, is for you to guide them. I got really great strategic advice. If you're not following him, I plug him in like everything I talk about. His name is Greg Danes. I call him the churn doctor. He just has such an outstanding view on thinking about retention. And he and I had a conversation. He's been a really good mentor to me. And we had a conversation a couple of years ago about supporting the enterprise. And he was like, listen, you have to drive the bus. He was like, if you remember anything, it's that. If they're wrong, if they're going down the wrong path, it is up to you to get them on the right path. And so that means saying, hey, I am here because you pay our business an incredible amount of money to get you the things you want. And I have to tell you that this is not going to work for this reason. You will earn so much more respect for giving them the straight answer and giving it to them in a way that directly relates back to what they're trying to achieve with you. Has anybody read the book Radical Candor? Like, I know we talk a lot about that when like delivering feedback to people. Like if you manage people, and it's similar. It's like the 2x2 theory as well. Like Rooney's empathy versus the other one. I've clearly memorized it, right? But I think there's a theme in there that's so important that applies to customers too, which is like if you've earned their trust and you have a relationship with them, you've earned the right to give them the direct feedback that they expect from you. So I hope that answers the question, but that's how I think about it. Like, you not giving them that direct feedback is in fact detrimental to them continuing to see value from you, and you will probably earn more respect and more engagement if you're able to set the table for them and show them the way forward in direct relation to the thing that they're trying to achieve.
Okay, so great talk, Julie. Amazing customer advocacy examples from Drift. 3 questions. How did you go about selecting your customer advisory board from your customer base? How often do you engage your CAB customers? How do you segment your CAB customers so that you engage with them in a meaningful way?
Okay, so it's like selection, segmentation, and frequency. Okay, so I'll start out by saying because we transitioned, CAB didn't happen, right? So like we made that pivot to really transition from CAB to network. Going into next year, CAB will happen, and I'll share the initial criteria we had. We were looking at spend, we were looking at engagement, we were looking at role, and it's really interesting. This is a very timely question because I just got some advice again from a mentor who shared that her point of view is this, which is look to find the 7 or 8 people that you have already established relationships with and who you know are strategic drivers of your solutions at their business. So their role, I think originally I was trying to like really focus on like they must be all of these roles from these types of businesses. Her take was get 7 or 8 people who have influence on what's happening with what Drift does for their business, and bring them to the table to talk with your executive leadership team, product strategy team, product marketing, and overall business strategy, because they're the ones who are so invested in it. Her other point was over time, there's likely the opportunity for strategic advisory, which is very different. That is C-level, executive level, very small handful of customers where you likely talk nothing about product and it's all strategy, business growth, trends in the industry. So that to me is like, if I can even bring my brain to get past this week, like thinking through 2022, that's where I'd like to go. Like my long game is that we get there. Short-term game is likely the 7 or 8 people we're going to select from our existing group of highly engaged companies. From your other part of the question, part 2 is segmentation. For us, like we very specifically sort of operate in enterprise and mid-market. So I'm just going to cut it in half. I'm going to bring a handful from enterprise, a handful from mid-market. Recommendations I've heard from other people have been, it really depends on how you slice and dice. Like if your enterprise is like true enterprise, if you're talking like hundreds of thousands of employees, and then your mid-market is like 200 employees or so, like you just have to be aware of that dissonance, because the conversations will not be the same and the people will be together and be like, why are we here together? So what has worked well for us has been enterprise, mid-market, and really focusing on sort of their level, but more so like what that level looks like in their role at the company versus just title. And the third is frequency. So these Ascend events we do twice monthly. We do an East Coast and a West Coast because they're mostly North Am based. More to come internationally as we go into 2021. And for CAB, my goal again, like focused, repeat, and simplify, focus, repeat. I want to get one nailed. Like my goal is to get the right people to have the right conversation once, learn from it, and then determine the repeatability. And the feedback I heard was this is something that's probably like twice a year. And then over time, you segment further. So I've talked to some companies, big enterprises, and they have 8 total cabs with executive briefing and other things that happen, and it's a full-time role. Like we're not there yet. I'm not going to hire somebody to run these. And so I'm optimizing both for like first out of the gate, this is the first one we're going to do, and for like resource and where we are at the stage of the business. But my plan is like a 2 to 3 year view of where we want to get these to.
Wow. I think we are like bang on time now. There's another couple of questions, but I think we'll probably save them for the panel tonight, because I think it'll give us a good starting base. Julie, that was amazing. Thank you so much for taking some time out. And
of course.
I don't know if you can see the comments, but there's a lot of thanks and great talks in there. Joe, anything from you?
Just a massive thank you, really. This is the first opportunity that we've had the chance to meet, and I'm just sat here in my little village, blown away, absolutely blown away. So,
thank you. Well, thanks for I love talking about this. I really do. I'm grateful that I do something for a living that I enjoy so much. So I'm happy to talk about it and excited to join you again later today.
Absolutely. And so for everybody in the call, the panel is at 8 p.m. GMT time. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks,
bye, everybody.
Julie.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Bye.